Welcome everybody to Ask. I'm Pastor Jamie. It's Cornerstone Church. We're here. We're ready to go. I hope you are too. Get your favorite cup, mug of hot cocoa in your Ask mug, and let's get started. All right, we have a few good questions this week. Remember, we need your questions. We're getting a little bit low on them, so if you have something, could be a question you've always wanted to know about the Bible or a topic in the Bible, faith in general, a personal thing. Someone asked last week about when Christian couples should get married, something like that. All of these kinds of questions other people are asking as well. So go on our website, CornerstoneBV.org. Hit the media page drop down, Ask has its own page, click on that, and then it'll open up a window where you can just type in your question. You can leave your name, but most don't, and it's perfectly fine. Just type in the question, that's all we need. It will get sent to us, to our crack producer, Steve Dion, and he will get it to me. All right, this one came in a while ago around Christmas time, as you can probably imagine, but it's still a great question that I'm sure you've asked before or thought about. What was the Christmas star anyway? So a bunch of theories about that. So obviously we're talking about Matthew chapter 2 when the Magi came and said they saw the star in the sky and they knew that the Savior was born, the Christ was to be born, and they came to see him and worship him, give him gifts, right? So the Magi themselves are probably, although the Bible doesn't tell us, probably from Babylon. They were from the east, and there was prophecies probably known there. Daniel was there. There was a lot of God's people there in captivity. So there's a lot of that of writings that they probably had studied. And if they're Magi, they studied the stars. They studied ancient writings. And those kinds of things were really important to them. And so they saw something, right? But here's one of the things that most likely didn't happen that I think is sometimes seen in our movies and shows and how it's depicted. And that is that they saw this light in the sky, the star, and they followed it all the way to Jesus' home. That probably, when you read the text, didn't happen that way. They definitely saw it while they were in the east, right? I have some scripture here. It says, "Now after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, in the days of Herod the king, behold, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem, saying, 'Where is he who was born King of the Jews? For we saw his star when it rose and have come to worship him.' When Herod the king heard this, he was troubled, and all of Jerusalem with him." So the star clearly didn't lead them right to the home, because they went to Jerusalem. So they had seen prophecies, probably from Numbers and Genesis. That's where they are. That will be a mark that the Christ has been born. And they probably saw this and they said, "Oh, that Christ has been born." And so they set out to where they assumed the Jewish Messiah would be born, Jerusalem. So the star is no longer there, and they go to Jerusalem looking for him. If the star was leading them, they wouldn't have had to ask that question, right? And this also happens. So when Herod hears that, Herod does not want to know, and it's probably took about a year and a half or so, up to 2 years, we know, for them to get there, because Jesus is probably about 2 years old at this point, maybe a little younger, but Herod killed 2 years and younger. So that's what Herod was kind of going with, that he can't be older than 2. He might be younger, but he can't be older than 2. And so they tell, he tells them, "Hey, we think that the Messiah is supposed to be born in Bethlehem. You go and find out, and then let me know where he is," right? So after listening to the king, the Magi, went on their way, and behold, the star they had seen when it rose went before them until it came to rest over the place where the child was. So it seems pretty clear that it rose when they were still in the east, probably Babylon, but wherever they were, right? And they saw it, they knew it happened, and then they started going to Jerusalem without that leading them. That's just where they assumed, and then it popped up again. So the real question is, what is this? From the text and from what we can see and based on geography, all of that I don't have time for, it almost definitely isn't an astronomical, is that the right word? Yeah, event. So meaning it's not an actual star. It's probably a light, a supernatural light that God put there, which he's done before, that would reflect reflect his glory, right? So the prophecy was there. That's why they saw it, knew there was some. They studied stars. So if it was just a regular star they already knew about, then they probably wouldn't have gotten excited. So it was definitely something out of the ordinary, and that's what caused them to make the journey that they did. And it seems like they saw it in the beginning, and then at the end, it led them right to where Jesus was born. Okay? Good. Probably a supernatural event. Second question. Should Christians read non-Christian literature? I guess just a short answer to that is yes, absolutely. I do. I think you should. I think reading is good. I think reading builds knowledge base in all different areas. And to not read things that aren't specifically Christian would be a mistake. Just like, should you ever watch a TV show that isn't distinctly Christian? Should you ever watch a movie that isn't distinctly Christian? Should you ever, at a certain point, like all creativity is from God. And granted, it can easily get warped by sin, but I still think a lot of this creativity can be helpful to us for a lot of different reasons. I would say this: you should stay away from literature that is made to be what we would call smut, sexual literature or stuff that, it just isn't good. It's just not quality literature. It's just made to have people enact on sin. You should stay away from that. There's not as much of that as there is in video form, I don't think, but it definitely exists. You should also kind of know yourself. Is reading a romance novel wrong? No, not necessarily, but if you know it causes you to envy and actually kind of disparage your spouse because you want him to be like Fabio or whoever the classic guy in the romance novels are, then you should stay away from them because that's causing you to sin. If reading scary stories keeps you up at night, gives you horrible nightmares, then you probably shouldn't read them. You yourself, you got to know yourself, right? If you're you don't react well to those things. But overall, I think we should enjoy stories of all different kinds, and I think it's helpful. It gives us a broader avenue of understanding people that come in our world and just being able to interact better with them. And I think God, even if it's not distinctly Christian, He gave us stories because stories are creativity, and God is a creative God. I mean, Jesus told stories all the time. And so they had a point to them, obviously, but they're good, right? So I don't think you should keep yourself away from good stories. I really don't. Last question for this episode, anyway, is can you suggest ways to monitor my kids online? So we've had this question before, and maybe we should just do a whole episode on it someday. I think it would be a good idea, but I won't today. I mean, if you're asking this question, you have probably, I would assume, done some research. If not, you should. I've done research, and it can get. There's a lot of different things out there at this point that offer a lot of different types of services. And depending on your level of understanding technology, you may need to get someone in your life who's more techie. If you're not, it doesn't mean you have to be a complete, computer geek to know the stuff. But if you have no idea how the internet works or social media works, you should get some help because your kids already know like 100,000 times more than you, and they're 5, right? So you should get some help because it's very difficult. I was talking to my son who's 16, and we were just kind of talking about, a lot of people see his generation, the Gen Z generation, is the first generation ever that's had to deal with this, and that's constant connectivity. And this is just massive social experiment that's going on. That's probably going to end horribly. And then I said, my generation, so if you have kids and you're either mine or just below it, we're the first generation that have had to learn to parent this. So we have to give ourselves a little bit of a break because I came to the point where sometimes I just have no idea what to do because I don't know what that's like. There's other things that my son goes through. I remember going through that. And so I can help him with that. I don't know what it's like to constantly be connected. It sounds horrible, but they just are. If you don't think your kid is and they're a teenager, you're probably lying to yourself. Maybe not, but they find a way. And so do the research, get some help, think carefully about it. There's a lot of different things. There's a lot of reviews on different services. There's filtering that will simply block websites. So you can block things like pornography. You can even block social media if you don't want your child to have social media. You can do things like that where, some are better than others. Some will really slow devices down, which, is kind of a, no pun intended, drag, right? I mean, what's the point of having a device if it's too slow and your kid will be constantly complaining, right? So you don't necessarily want to do that, but some will do that. A couple of the ones that I've tried out for my kids, I looked pretty cllosely at one called Covenant Eyes because it's been around a long time and it's distinctly Christian, and it's really good, but it's incredibly invasive. It not only filters, but it also takes screenshots of your phone and sends it to your accountability partner. And that's where that's really good is if there's already an issue, I think, like your son or daughter, especially your son, has an issue going on that you really want to monitor. And by the way, this could be for you. If you have an issue with pornography, get an accountability partner. Covenant Eyes can be great for you because this is really, it's invasive, but that's what you need. You need to break this sinful habit in your life. But if you got a 12-year-old son who's not really, you just want to prevent stuff, it's going to be really disconcerting. His phone's taking, or his device is getting screenshotted and sent to you, and they're not necessarily doing anything wrong. It just feels like a constant invasion of privacy. You may have no issue with that. I didn't find that was most helpful for my situation. What I ended up settling on, and this is kind of new, this thing called BARK, B-A-R-K. This is really good if you have younger kids too, but I have teenagers, and what it does is it doesn't actually filter anything or slow anything down. It just monitors everything, and you can kind of pick and choose if you want to. You get the password of every, whether it's YouTube or any social media site that your kids have, and if you don't, if you're like, no, I don't really need to monitor their Instagram page, it's fine. Then don't. But if you want to monitor their Snapchat, you want to monitor their Facebook, you want to monitor YouTube, what they're looking at on YouTube, and then you can actually connect directly to their phone or their iPad or all of them, and it will actually, what it does is it flags and sends you an email message flagging content that was on that and why. And this is again, it's BARK, B-A-R-K. You can Google it. And it's not that, it's like $10 a month, I think, which I find worth it. And so there's different settings. So like when I first did it, like it flagged my daughter. She saw a clip from The Office and it flagged it for violence. I was like, that's not that bad. So I took it from the highest setting and put it on for violence, lowest setting, because my daughter doesn't have a big issue with seeking out real graphic violence. So it will still flag it if it is, but it'll flag things for sexual profanity, all the different categories, and it'll tell you why it's flagging it. You may look at it and be like, that's a little ridiculous. Their friends were talking and one of them said something and whatever. But at least you know. And what it does is some of these other things will let you look at everything. You don't have time to look at everything your son or daughter's doing. But this actually allows you to just look at what it found as flagged. So you can look at it for a couple of minutes, and then what I also really like, especially if you have older kids, is it doesn't necessarily just stop them right then and there. While that's good, but I think it allows you to have conversations. Why this? I see it. Why are you doing this? Why are you saying this? And actually can allow you to have conversations about being safe online, because whether we like it or not, my son's 16 and I can completely control him now, but in like 5 years, right? It's over. And so it's better to parent at this point to have conversations with him. So when he is fully on his own, the hope is he'll be making a lot better choices on his own without needing me to be over him. There's a lot of others, the old antivirus, Norton and McAfee, they have some pretty good ones. I haven't tested out. But again, do your research. There's a lot of good lists out there of what works. Try them out. It's definitely worth it if you have kids online and you're letting them have social media and you're not monitoring at all. That is a huge mistake. It's worth $10 a month. I mean, gosh, think about that. I practically spent that on the movies last night going, It's like it's worth it to spend and invest that. You won't catch everything. They're still going to get around things, but at least you're doing your very best to help them. All right? I know it's a long answer, but it's a really important question. Maybe we'll do a whole, thing on that sometime. All right, that's been Ask. Have fun. Make sure you submit your questions. Be in church Saturday at 5, Sunday at 9 or 11. Let's go, and we'll see you next week.